Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations. Okay, hello and welcome once again to another iteration of the Simulationist podcast. This is iteration 48. It is August the 4th. Hey Ryan.
Hey Josh, what's up?
Lots of stuff. Oh, tomorrow's BC Day.
Yes.
So happy BC Day.
For those of you in BC, it's not like all of Canada celebrates BC Day. Although I really would like that if instead of like, okay, this is Easter long weekend, this is the BC Day long weekend, we take the 10 of the months and we have the one long weekend there, and it's one for each of the provinces.
One for, yeah.
And that way all of Canada can properly appreciate all the provinces. And well, I suppose we can avoid December because that's got all like the Christmas stuff where nobody's really doing much anyways.
Okay.
And one of the other months can be for like the territories.
July could be Canada Day, like, you know.
Well, yeah. There's always the Canada Day.
So,
okay, so I guess
one for the whole. But yeah, then
one of the provinces is going to have to share the same month as the Christmas, though. And so you're going to have to wonder who gets stuck with the Christmas, celebration day that no one's going to really pay attention to because, dude, Christmas is almost here.
Yes, good question. It's hard to say because people don't like Alberta, but people also don't like Ontario.
Quebec's not going to take it. Quebec would just be so adamant against that.
Quebec would.
They would demand a summer day for theirs so that people could really appreciate it and go and do something good and say, I love this Quebec long weekend.
And then BC would be like, whatever, we don't care. Or, like, if you took it away from
we'd
BC,
be okay. We'd take a February, man. We're cool like that.
Well, we'd even take a December, but then people are like, but wait, we hate Alberta. Or, but wait, we hate Ontario.
You don't suppose PEI would take it, do you? They seem like a nice group of people.
They might take December.
Well, the way I see it is everyone makes the jokes. There's only two reasons to go to PEI. Anne of Green Gables and their potatoes. And technically you can get both of them shipped out to you wherever you are on the earth.
Right.
So, having them have their, like, provincial long weekend thing be on December, maybe they could, Christmas up the place a little bit, and then people go there for Christmas more. Then they got a third reason to go visit.
Yep.
Yeah. They seem like a resourceful group of people that could really utilize that to its best potential.
Could be. Although I'm thinking Victoria does have the best weather in December.
Oh.
So maybe Victoria.
So we just move like the Victoria Day sort of thing, BC Day to December, just to get everyone to come in and say, got away from the snow.
Yeah, pretty much. So yes, happy BC Day. If you're listening to this as planned, it should be uploaded by tomorrow. It will be BC Day for you, or it'll be a future BC Day 2014 or whatever.
Well, you can make any day BC Day if it's really in your heart.
Right. British Columbia is in your heart.
Although, depending what the other provinces say, it's usually rolled up in a joint.
That's true. We
have a stereotype, yeah. But you can have it in your lungs, if not in your heart.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Anyway, let me see. Oh, here, let's do this. What have you been up to, gaming wise?
Simulation wise, I have been getting back into the Wheel of Time series. I took a small break. It was a bit of a heady thing, and I finished the first 3 books. I kind of like reading them as like groups of trilogies. But yeah, the 14th and final book is now out, so I'm officially X many books behind at any given point in time because they've finished the last one. It's a definitive thing now. It's not like I can catch up in time. No, it's here, it's out, it's done, and so I got to get caught up.
Oh, what book did you say you were on?
The Shadow Rising, book 4 of 14.
Okay.
I'm enjoying it for the most part. They're doing some interesting things. Like the first 3 books, it was always about, you are the Dragon Reborn, and he's like, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. And it's like, the evidence is mounting, you cannot deny it, I can deny it, I'm not the Dragon Reborn. And no, he's finally, okay, I am the Dragon Reborn, I'm accepting this. I will save the world and cause it to break at the same time. It's going to be a horrible time, I'm going to be responsible for it, everyone's going to hate me and love me, and all sorts of prophetic, weird, double things going on.
Okay, that's interesting. So the main character carries on through all these?
Yes,
okay.
He carries on, and so he's finally accepted what is his fate, what is his role within the great cycle of being.
Okay.
That said, it's a little bit much on the relationship end of things for me so far.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, I love her, but I also really think fondly of her, but no, I've always been sort of promised to the third lady, and we were always, grew up together and was always effectively meant to be. And it's like, well, I'm kind of reading this for awesomeness, not about, relationship triangles and other various, shapes.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm only 7 chapters in or so, and it's finally started to move quicker paced. It looks like that might actually be important to the relationship and as to who he's involved with, as to how it affects him. So I'm willing to give, Robert Jordan the benefit of the doubt.
Who would have thought that our relationships with other human beings could be meaningful?
Well, within the role of a cosmic thing.
Okay, yeah. No, I hear you.
There's the evil lady who's sided with the dark forces. She doesn't have an effect of her beauty doesn't affect him as much because he's kind of in a relationship with this other quite nice beautiful lady here, and so just by showing up as a beautiful young woman, she can't just instantly snap his attention straight to that. She's got to work more against it, and so that's actually proven to be interesting. If he was a single man, well, it would have been much easier for her to grab his attention and possibly get him to realign to her way of thinking.
Okay, well, I suppose it depends on the single man in question, but I suppose...
Well, that's the thing, is they do reiterate a whole lot about the quality of a person. Of the 3 more main protagonists of male characters, 2 of them are very staunchly old-fashioned, one-woman kind of guy, and the third guy's into booze, gambling, drinking, and women.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, yeah.
That way, everyone you get something good to read about for all angles, but it really does show the contrast between them. So yes, because the main character is kind of sneaking kisses with this other lady, when the dark, beautiful lady shows up, no, it really doesn't have to show up and say, "Look at me, I'm beautiful," and all of a sudden, bam, he's focused only there. No, it doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
So, if it keeps on going like that, I'm going to say I retract my potentially negative thoughts about how the relationship angle is being going within the book.
Okay, because it matters cosmically. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
It definitely affects the plot and the course of how people can go about their business, and I quite like that.
Yeah. Mike, so not to get too deep into the plot, but if he's accepted his fate as some kind of reborn dragon, does that mean he's a king of some land or something?
Technically, he has the ability to lead all men. They will follow to his banner as he breaks the world and saves it at the same time.
So he's becoming like an emperor, like Genghis Khan or something?
Well, he is, at the start of this book, ruling a small nation-state.
Okay.
He took the castle that could not be taken, and he took the sword that is not a sword, and done all sorts of things, it has to do with prophecy.
Okay,
in order to be the person, you must do this impossible task and this impossible task and accomplish this impossible thing. And so there is the stone that cannot be broken into, he breaks it. The sword that is not a sword, he has it. So I do like that aspect of it, where it definitely does keep... because a lot of books, they have, the legends and the prophecies foretell this, and then people go, oh no, it was fairly mundane and actually kind of easy to do. It's like, you just have to reinterpret it. No, he's actually doing what is technically kind of impossible. And very, very dangerous as he slowly goes insane from utilizing tainted power.
Okay, is he like a mage or something too?
In D&D terms, he would be closer associated with a... So that's interesting. It would be more of a sorcerer type thing. But the powers he makes up on the fly, but he technically knows them from his past incarnations.
Okay, sure, yeah.
His previous incarnation was the man who caused everything to be as it is, and caused all the things that are bad to be bad, or the things that were bad and sealed away to be bad and sealed away. And so that's why he's an important soul. Okay. He's done it before, he can do it again. Yeah. Even if he's technically not the same person. But it's all still back up there as his previous soul self. It's important.
So kind of like Doctor Who.
Yes, actually, it very much rings with a similar style.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's cool.
It is nice. I do like reading it and see how it unfolds. That said, knowing I've got, 10 books at about 800 pages apiece. Yeah, 8,000 pages to get through to figure out how it all unfolds. A little daunting.
Yeah.
But it's a good read, and as my daughter learns to crawl around, it's something for me to do, as she just has fun by herself with her toys.
Oh, yeah. Well, so, cool.
Hooray. Other than that, not too much for this and that. Just dalliances here and there, keeping up on my games.
Just gaming dalliance? Yeah, the video games and stuff?
Yes. Just, doing the weeklies here, doing the dailies there. Nothing much to report. Not this week.
Okay, well...
how about you?
That's cool. Me, yay. Well, I have also been doing some reading. I'm almost at the end of the very first book in the Game of Thrones series.
That's a big, dense tome.
A Game of Thrones. Although I suppose the series itself is called A Song of Ice and Fire. Something like, or A Song of Fire and
Ice. Well, that's the thing, is it's called The Song of Fire and Ice. To those who read the books, to those who watch the TV series, it's a Game of Thrones.
Okay, yeah, well, either way, I think people will recognize it. So I've been basically reading so many chapters and then going to iTunes and finding, basically going through the episodes. And if I've already read that, then I'll go ahead and watch the episodes. So I'm kind of reading and watching at the same time to get kind of that sort of feel to it. And this week, for some reason, I didn't enjoy the TV series. Like, I felt that the book was a much richer experience, and people always say that about books that get turned into movies, but I felt that especially this time. I was like, well, I was really enjoying the book, and then when I went to watch the TV series, it was not as good as reading the book. Still, that series there are aspects of it that I so like very good, very well done, very well acted, and of course there's some pretty costumes and everything.
I think the difference where people always say that the book was better is simply because we haven't learned that magic trick for properly adapting the different media styles.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, I think they did.
They're doing
good job.
They're doing good,
yeah.
But you say that about almost any series. Harry Potter books were better.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit books were better.
And it's just, I guess you can't fit as much information and what people actually want to know into a TV show.
I think there's a way to do it. I just don't know what it is. I do believe it is a possibility, though. We just have to find that one little secret. It's like, oh, that's how you do it. Yeah, let's redo everything now and let's get it right this time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and sometimes it's just the fact that books take place over, years or months or whatever. The time scale can be very long, like within the story. And then a TV show often has to feel very much like this is all happening same day kind of deal. So it might be that you should tell stories in TV and movies that are smaller pieces of the novel. Like you should just take a chapter of the novel and then expand what you can, like.
That's an interesting theory.
Visually, so.
See, I've always wondered why authors would want to have a movie made out of their stuff when, if they made a TV series, they could get that much more in depth.
Yeah.
Like, let's just take Dan Aykroyd, for example. He loves Ghostbusters. That's his little fun baby. He's had fun with that for the last 30 years now. Mm-hmm. But he's only had 2 movies and a video game.
Yeah.
That's official.
The cartoon wasn't official?
The cartoon was not, it did not have his hand in it.
Okay,
he may have put out some ideas here and there, talked to the writers a little bit, but it's not like he was at the helm the same way he was at the helm for the script. But if he was to make a TV series for the Ghostbusters, or I suppose, because let's face it, the original Ghostbusters are at retirement age, next-gen Ghostbusters.
Sure, yeah.
If he was to do that, and they were to have a 13 half-hour episodes, that's still 6.5 hours worth of taping, of video, of stuff you could put out.
Yeah.
And that already trumps the first 2 movies. You can get so much more from a TV series time-wise than you can with a single movie.
Yep.
You'd have to definitely work it up to the more like a trilogy style if you want to get it right.
Yeah. Well, but there's a problem with TV in that each of those 22 to 30-minute segments has to have a beginning, middle, and end of its own. So you have to figure out which bits of the, telling your story fit into.
I think that the 24 did a good job at finding ways around that.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't watched the entire thing, nor have I actually completely watched a full season yet.
Yeah.
But they definitely made sure to keep the time as an aspect of it to help say, okay, now this is this hour done. Rather than this is the end of this story. It's just this is this section of it done. Tune in next time for the next hour's worth of stuff, happening.
Yeah, well, 24 definitely broke ground with that. I don't know if anybody had done a series like that before, not that I know.
Or at least as well.
Yeah.
Definitely there's people out there that were making series where you have to follow definitely episode by episode in sequence to fully understand what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
But 24 really just completely set a new standard for that.
Yeah.
I will state, though, however, that style does not lend itself to repeats as well.
True, yeah.
You don't see 24 reruns on anywhere near as often. And given how much praise it got, you should have seen it on as often as, say, CSI was back when it was huge and fresh and new. But no, it never got the replay. Because you really have to watch it in sequence.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess it does. Yeah.
So there is always technically a downside, and I can see from the point of an executive perspective, don't work with the 24 style because you're never going to sell off and get a huge amount of money in the syndication rights. The best you can hope for is selling off the box season sets.
Yeah, right. So the other thing that I've been up to is more Minecraft.
Always
so
more.
My latest project is a giant sheep farm.
Well, okay, just to make certain, this is just a large farm for sheep. You don't actually have coded in giant sheep.
Well, now, no, but now that you mention that, I may have to try that.
I wouldn't mind looking up to see if they do have just a giant animals mod.
Yeah.
I do know they can make giant zombies and
yeah,
giant
it would be fairly
slimes.
easy to make a giant sheep. That'd be, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Why you'd have giant sheep is another question entirely.
Yeah.
Just extra meat, extra wool, I suppose, sort of thing.
Yeah.
For the animals.
I guess so. Yeah.
Although I gotta admit, the concept of just seeing a huge tower-sized, as you go behind you. Oh my God! Just they did have to give the creeper a different name. It just have to be like the Crater Maker.
Yeah.
Oh, but you can see so many people just downloading that almost reflexively and then cursing themselves as they play, and then it just appears behind them. Just the huge hissing, and then boom! It'd be the A-bomb of monsters, man.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Giant Endermen. The Ender Giants.
Yeah, Ender Giants. Pick up whole chunks of land.
It picks up a 4x4 chunk and moves it around, yeah. Ooh, that's a good idea. We should start making more notes about this stuff for see if people have done it later on, or if we can just commission other people to
Sure.
pick it up.
Yeah, we can look it up. Yeah, okay. So I think that covers what I've been doing, what I've been up to.
So have you had any problems with the giant sheep farm?
Oh, problems?
Because I must admit, since the last 2 updates, I have kept having my mushrooms pop out of their gate.
Oh yeah. Well, what version are you on again? Right
I think I'm at the latest one. Is it 1.6.2?
Yeah, it should be 1.6.2. And what Jens said is he's the lead developer.
Fixed it.
He said he fixed it. Yeah, but I hear from just the chatter and the forums and everything, I hear that it's not fixed.
Now this might be partially my fault because I do have what is effectively 2 copies of the same map, the old version and the new one. And I do like going back to the old one and seeing what I did and saying to myself, I can do better than that. and then going over to the new one. And that's usually when I find I go back to the map on the new one that I have an animal outside of a pen.
Well, it could be that. I don't think there would be too much. Like, I don't think he actually changed the fences, because your fences stay there and they stay fences. So I don't think he changed too much about them. Let me see.
All I know is that's when it tends to happen for when I have creatures popping out of the fence.
Yeah, if you don't wander too far, like, do you kind of stick around your main area most of the
I
time?
technically go into different areas of the spot. I do know. Well, actually, I switched up the whole Java to the 64-bit, so now I have the extra long range version.
Oh,
and I can look at that little island I've made that's as spherical or as circular as you can get for a land of squares.
Yeah.
I can look over at that, and I can look at it, and it'll never generate monsters. I'm far enough away they won't pop in.
Okay, yeah.
But I do go over there, and it does make sure that things don't happen. I can go over there, come back, and not everything's gone through the smelting process.
Okay, because I'll tell you what, I think the way that the fences work is that when the chunk becomes unloaded, so when you either exit the game or you leave the area so that the chunk is not in view or not active in memory, that the location of the sheep is only saved according to the block.
Oh.
So the sheep actually could be located in the same block as the fence, and just when it reloads, the sheep is put on the other side of that fence.
So you're saying what's needed is a double fence system to definitely secure then?
Yeah, you could. That would probably do the trick for you. With me, I just breed so many sheep, like I just pack the pen.
You just don't care anymore.
So I just let them go. Yeah.
Well, I do have a lot of extra mushrooms wandering around my island.
Yeah.
And the water's just off of it.
Yeah. The other thing that people do is they've basically made elaborate water systems so that it's just like a 2-block wide.
Always pushes
water
them
fence
in?
that pushes them inwards toward the pen.
That sounds a little bit more complicated
Kind
than
of a lot of work, yeah. But yeah, if you do a two wide fence, that might do the trick. Sometimes people just do 2 wide walls of dirt or cobblestone or whatever.
I do know when I had all my mushrooms behind a wall of sod, when I was just starting to move everything around to how I wanted it, no one escaped that way.
Yeah, that would probably do it, I think.
So it's just the skinny stuff then. So yeah, I think it might be right. They get too close to the edge of the block that qualifies being on the other side. You leave, you come back, and yeah, they teleport to the other side of the block, which means they're out.
Yeah. And I believe this was the bug that Jens said he fixed, but I don't know if he...
Well, that's the thing about bugs, is you can fix them 6 or 7 different ways, and there can still be an 8th way they're still messing up. It's just rather hard to identify how the bug is. The best you can do is the best you can do. But you can always go back to it.
I'll tell you about another bug, too, is that with this same thing, if you have babies, like baby sheep or baby chickens or whatever, they can and you have corner fences that they can get to. They can actually get into the hitbox of the fence, but they're prevented from exiting the hitbox because the fence is supposed to be solid, right? Except that it's solid on the edges. But of course, if you get inside the hitbox of the fence, you can't actually make your way out. So you have a problem with baby animals and chickens being inside those.
I'm okay with them getting stuck there because that means they're not going anywhere else. Especially with the chicks, they'll turn into the chickens. They'll always be there. I'll just walk by, pick up the eggs as they lay them.
It might even be a good way to do create a farm, or a chicken farm where they're just laying eggs right there.
Well, I don't like the way they wind up popping down through the ground every so often. That just gets spooky.
Yeah, that's annoying too.
That's just creepy.
Yeah, this game's full of bugs.
Well, let's face it, it's fun bugs. They're never the game has crashed and corrupted, now you gotta start all over again. They're fun bugs.
Yeah, well,
that's part of the reason I love Dwarf Fortress. Is some of the worst bugs are the most entertaining.
Yes.
And then some of the most mundane bugs wind up doing horrible things. And then you can always induce the bugs. There's a nice way where if you copy some of the files, you go into the domestic animals, Control-C, Control-V, Control-V. You've just duplicated the animals. It messes up everything for a character, for like anything like a creature base gets completely messed up, and you'll wind up having things like entire civilizations made out of wagon carts, and you know you'll embark with your 7 dwarves, but no, they're actually dogs, and they're all got horrible like elf skin suits on. And then the game will wind up crashing eventually, but it's a lot of weird fun while it lasts.
Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of crashing, I tried to modify a few things, and if you forget to put in your parentheses right, which I did, I tried to, I made wooden shears as a
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, it's fairly simple to do. You just basically copy-paste the
metal shears, say make
Java,
it from wood.
And just say, different material.
So how long do they last? Do they degrade as quick as wooden regular items do compared to like stone or steel?
Well, you can define that, and I decided just whimsically to define it as being basically the lower tier. So the wooden shears degrade faster. They don't.
It makes sense.
They don't instantly chop leaves the way the metal ones do, so they're not as good. But of course, the thing about wooden shears is all you need is a tree, and you can get
your shears.
And, everything.
Oh, I might need to snag that off here, because that's one of my pet peeves, is I don't want to waste iron just for getting a lot of vines around my place.
Yeah, well, I'll have to send it to you. But yeah, basically I forgot a parenthesis, because this is one of the things that's a little fiddly with Minecraft modding, and I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to get better. But once I added wooden shears, it was like, okay, now you have to modify all the blocks that it can cut. Like, so you have to go into the leaf block and the grass block and the vine block and tripwire. I think there might be a couple others, and add in that yes, this can be cut by wooden shears, and you write it in code or whatever. And then if you don't put in your parentheses, the whole game just crashes. As soon as you try to harvest a leaf block, it's like.
Is there like a error report file anywhere within?
Yeah, it does generate one, and it's sometimes it kind of tells you what. But in this case, it was like I had to basically go through and look at everything I'd done and be like, why is this crashing? Because I couldn't figure it out from the report.
That is one of the things I do love about Dwarf Fortress, is they have a nice little error log thing that's usually kept like right next to the exe file, exe error log, and then if anything goes wrong with your modding, it'll say exactly what. Every time you load it up, it'll say exactly what the hell you did wrong.
Yeah.
Well, even though it occasionally doesn't matter. I was able to make poisonous stone. It was always set to a certain temperature, and whenever it was like inhaled, it would make you fall asleep. Mm-hmm. It was a nice way to slow people down from digging too far too quickly. So they'd dig out the area, it would produce a stone, the stone would immediately sublimate to a gas, the gas would wind up getting into the dwarfs. As long as they get all sleepy, then they go crash.
Oh, okay.
It's a nice way of slowing
things.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
I like it because it was non-lethal, and it was just annoying enough to make you want to plant around that sort of stone.
Yeah, sure.
But it constantly comes up in the error log. Hey, this is not a known token. Hey, you can't do this. But no, actually, I totally can, and it works perfectly.
It works. Okay.
Except the error log keeps coming up every time you start the game, saying, hey, not right.
Yeah.
So
well,
I don't care that it's not right. It's fine.
It works, though.
Yeah. I may have to double check. There's probably a better way of doing it, though. Oh, well.
That's good. Oh, hey, Dwarf Fortress is always single player, right? There's no.
Yes,
way to do
there has been some attempts at multiplayer, and Lord knows a week does not go by in the suggestion forums where someone says multiplayer.
Yeah.
However, the multiplayer version that has been mocked up was more of a 4 people playing it at the same time, and it's just like a hot seat. Who gets a chance to do things?
Okay.
So
Are they on the same world too, though?
Same world, same map. Everyone's utilizing the game. Effectively runs. You'd say you have 4 people playing on their computers. The game's running on a 5th.
Right.
Sort of thing, and then everybody has the option of doing stuff in that, and you'd have to kind of coordinate to who switches off to do what.
Okay.
That's it. There is a nice hearty tradition of succession games. You have 1 year to do this, 1 game year. And fortunately, there's a nice thing that automatically save every season. So, so once spring comes, automatically saves. Then you take that save file and you give it off to someone else.
Okay.
And some of the best, most famous stories have been of people doing that.
Well, that sounds really fun.
This fortress is not a madhouse. It is not designed by madmen. It is designed by a series of madmen who have a different brand of madness from each other and hate the previous person intently. A nice way of describing how it usually descends into.
Well, we've talked a bit about Dwarf Fortress, and can you just mess up a world so bad that it's basically unplayable? Like, isn't that possible?
It is possible. Not very easy.
Okay.
But you can do it. I do recall a few games where somebody was just malicious. Like, there's fooling around, and then there's, and not labeling your lever, so the next guy comes in, goblins are attacking, throw the self-defense lever. Which one is that? There's 4 of them. And, that's funny. That's kind of funny. It's just because it's something you can see happening in real life. Nobody labeled the levers.
Yeah.
And people like to play it so that, when you throw the lever, you don't go back, you don't save scum, go back to the previous one. The lever you threw is the lever you threw.
All right.
It causes more fun that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. But occasionally you'll get a person who thinks that it'll be fun, like, okay, I put a bunch of, bridges in a small area. They're descending bridges, so anybody caught underneath them will get flattened and killed. I've got all the people down there underneath where it will be a bridge. I've hooked it up to 200 different levers in this area here. One guy is locked in. I have saved the game. He has a job to pull every lever, which will all do the same thing, and it will automatically kill it. I give that off to the next person. That's not really fun. That's more malicious.
Okay.
And technically not that bad. If you start the game paused, you can fix it in what is technically an instant.
Okay.
But, it's an interesting thing, a succession game. I do quite like the concept of it, though, and I would like to try and experiment with it in different genres, in different games. Like a round-table DMing session would be an interesting equivalency, I suppose.
I imagine you could do Minecraft that way, too.
No, that would be a very interesting way of doing it, yeah.
On your save file to the next person.
I'd actually like to look that up, see if they have it.
There'd probably should be a rule about not traveling too far either, because you could just, go off and just start new, and that wouldn't be within the spirit of it, really.
Not quite the same. Well, it's always usually about what you can do with what you have.
Yeah.
Some people are good at making huge pits. Some people are good at making buildings that look like real buildings.
Yeah.
It's all up to them.
I did watch, somebody created like a sort of game mode, I think it was Seth Bling, on one of he makes different games, like mini games in Minecraft. One of the games that he made was, it's a player versus player competitive, switching back and forth. There's 2 players in the world.
Okay.
On a server or whatever, basically whatever world they're on, and they're located in different, like, vastly separated areas, so they can't really get to each other. It's too far to practically get to each other.
Okay.
And they have every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes or whatever the timer is, they switch places. And the goal is to try and kill the other person. So
a lot of fun with TNT, I take it.
Yeah, you can use TNT, or you can just sort of
pressure
tunnel
switches
around lava, or you can just stand on top of a cliff and just, wait for... Oh, actually, I remember the timer's randomized. That's why. Yeah, so it's just, you don't know when you're going to get switched. So
that sounds like extra fun, I must admit.
Yeah, so you want to, like, dig a pit or dig some lava and then just sort of stand by it until... and then try and jump off at the last minute.
Or just make sure you're surrounded right, no matter where they go, and that way they switch, and then they don't realize what they're doing as they're moving forward until, too late, down.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice, actually.
Yeah. It's not perfect, though. Sometimes the teleportation will take a few seconds. Also depends on your server, so you may have warning, or you may, like...
But it does sound like a general principle, and I do encourage that.
Yeah, so... That's another version of multiplayer that you can do.
Competitive single player.
Yeah.
All right. So I do believe we have a proper topic today.
Okay. Yes. This topic.
The week before last, we were actually talking about henchmen and mooks and other just various terms for the villains, friends.
Yeah, or
lack of a better term.
Employees, whatever. Yeah.
Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're employees, sometimes they're just slaves.
Yeah, sure.
But I'd like to actually talk about the reverse of that.
Okay.
The sidekick, or I guess just a helpful secondary character.
All right, so we're talking about. Well, I guess we can get to multiple I don't know, the good guys' armies or whatever.
Well, so that's the thing is most good guys don't have armies.
Yeah.
That's one of the core ways to differentiate between villain and hero in a lot of genres, is that the villain has a lot of people that have effectively all the same face, no name, and they just go in and get beat up or killed depending on the nature of the stuff. Whereas the good guy has less people under him, but they're much more personalized. They're individuals, they are unique, and they're more valuable. And that's a nice way of determining what a hero is, what a villain is, how they treat the other people around them.
Yeah, that's true. G.I. Joe has an army behind them,
but every Joe is their own person.
Yeah, all the Joes in the show.
And they all wear different uniforms, which has got to be driving some military people just absolutely nuts whenever they see that.
Yeah.
That said, it's all done in lightheartedness. I mean, they're fighting a terrorist organization that has a hard time killing anybody. They will shoot down a Joe plane, but there's always a parachute popping out. No one actually dies from that. Not even the generic good guys in the other plane, just to show how bad the bad guys can be. Always parachute, everyone's okay.
Yeah. And also, Obi-Wan and Anakin fought on the side of the clones, didn't they, for a while?
Yes, although with the Clone War stuff, it's interesting because there really wasn't any good side from the greater perspective.
Okay.
They were both sides being played by the same person, the Emperor.
Right, true.
Darth Sidious. He was controlling the one side. His vassal was controlling the other, and between the two, there was no way they could actually lose.
Interesting.
So in that case, the good guys, although they did have clones, their clone people, although they all had the same voice actor, they did have their own names, and they did have different ways to tell them apart. They had different personalities.
Okay, yeah.
So as opposed to the droids, which had some personality, but they were very disposable. Very disposable.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving back to the sidekick, the individual friend of the hero or whatever. Well, let's see. What do we have to say about sidekicks?
Well, I think they're very interesting because, on the one hand, everybody needs someone with them. You can't just be out there and about doing it yourself. Because one, from the superhero genre, it's not the same thing. You don't feel as epic a character. You just feel like a lone nut vigilante.
Okay, yeah.
Which really helps explain who's bigger or lesser in like Marvel and DC. DC people seem more like iconic. They seem bigger than life because they're the center of their own group of people. Spider-Man doesn't have a sidekick for most of his career. He kind of gets like a Spider-Boy. Or he gets a partner every once in a while, Spider-Girl.
Yeah.
A Spider-Woman and all that. 3 different types of Spider-Woman. But they're always equals. They're not really a sidekick, so he doesn't seem bigger than or greater than. He always maintains the vigilante style that way. Even though, yes, he saves the world, sometimes on a weekly basis.
Right. And, of course, it's funny, too, because Batman and Robin, if I'm remembering correctly, become the dynamic duo, even though one character is clearly, the main force to be reckoned with.
And the other's his faithful ward.
Yeah, so it's funny that it's referred to as the dynamic duo, even though one, it's not really an equal relationship.
But I think that helps also illustrate the fact that Batman's a good guy, even though, let's face it, Batman can be portrayed very dark very easily. Is that they still acknowledge Robin so much as a person rather than just a sidekick, that it's no longer just the Caped Crusader, he's part of a dynamic duo. Even if the other person isn't his equal, he's still enough of an individual. Batman will trust him enough that they share a group name.
Well, and I guess the other thing about Robin is, like, if he were, like, to be considered on his own, which sometimes
he does. On times had his own comic book series.
Yeah, and in those cases, he's a pretty awesome dude. Like,
especially
he's a superhero.
Especially the third one. I loved and Damian Wayne got to be good towards the end, but apparently they killed him. So
it really takes a special kind of hero to be able to, like, he could be his own hero in his own right and do his own thing, but to be able to hang around with Batman, who's like makes him look like nothing, right? Like,
well,
I mean, not nothing, but it sort of diminishes Robin's stature when he's standing beside Batman.
On the other hand, you can make the argument anybody who's able to stand next to Batman is worthy of all themselves.
Yeah, well, that's true. You could say that.
That's just some Batman fanboyism,
but
though.
Maybe I'm thinking like a villain in that, that's sort of how villains think. They're like, no, I want to be the boss, or, like, why do I hang out with him if he just makes me look bad and weak?
Okay, now here's some interesting ones. Batman has a nice villains gallery, nice rogues gallery going. I actually don't want to use rogues gallery because that's kind of what they refer to just for the Flash villains. So villains gallery.
Sure.
There are the people out there who will argue there are some semantics about it. So I'll diffuse that by saying you're right. Let's do it differently. So let's look at Joker. For a long time, he was his own guy. In the TV series, he always had a gal with him. There's always a lady as part of the villainous party. Mm-hmm. She always thought Batman was cute, and she always reformed at the end. Mm-hmm. Just enough to go to prison and do good, do right, and serve, and all that sort of baloney they tried to horribly, horribly push on everyone.
Right, but then they added Harley Quinn.
Yes, and she managed to have her own series. It didn't last too long, but I read it. It was a good series. She was definitely a character worthy of her own. Sometimes she partners up with other supervillains. Sometimes she partners up with Poison Ivy. They have a lot of fun together, despite being very different people. And I don't care how you interpret that. They have fun together. I keep things honest and clean. PG-13 here.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff being said on the internet. They have a lot of fun together. But
I'm sure, yeah.
We'll ignore that whole aspect of things.
Okay, so where were we going?
The Joker, for a long time, never had what could be termed a villainous sidekick.
Right.
He had mooks. Oh boy, did he have mooks. They last like 2 panels as Batman beat them up and then, onto the Joker. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until Harley Quinn entered the scene that he had anything approaching what could be seen as a partner. But she still wasn't. They tried to make her as like a sidekick, but she kind of like automatically self-elevated to, partner. There was no...
Yeah.
Although, and let's face it, their relationship dynamic would clearly put her in otherwise the role of a sidekick.
Yeah.
She takes a lot of heap and abuse from the Joker. And yet she doesn't seem to... She was never able to hit the sidekick. She just rocketed straight up. Partner. Then her own technical character. Mm-hmm. Good enough character. You could... Oh, yeah, the stories just rate themselves. Let's keep doing that. Next thing you know, bam, bam, bam. They insert her into the comic book series, and oof.
Yeah.
She's been there ever since.
Yeah, and there's sort of a contradiction with the Joker because on the one hand he's supposed to be very highly intelligent, but on the other hand he's evil. So, or, evil, ambitious, or whatever it is.
A madman.
A madman. So he, like, on the one hand, he'll realize the practicality of treating Harley Quinn or whoever he's working with
just well enough she won't betray him or leave him.
Basically, yeah. So which may entail basically treating her as an equal in some cases.
On the other hand, she is smart enough that she does wind up stepping on his toes. She makes the joke work that he couldn't. Of all the fish he winds up poisoning that wind up becoming like Joker fish with a smile on their face, he was never able to get piranhas to do it. The piranha, those of you who know, just can't smile. They're always in that frown perpetually. It's physiologically just how they are. Okay. They're not actually frowning. That's just how their mouths go.
Yeah.
And so there's one bit where she manages to trap Batman, and she gets him to smile by hanging Batman upside down, and then she's going to dunk him in the tank. When he's upside down, he sees the piranhas. They're no longer frowning. The frown is upside down. They're smiling. And the Joker didn't like that because, well, for 2 reasons. One, she managed to make a joke work that he couldn't. And it's a little bit of ego on his part. And 2, you never explain the joke. If you had to explain the joke, it's not funny. So there's, I think that's an interesting dynamic for them, is that the good guys work together when they're partners, even if one is technically a sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the villains, there's infighting between them, even if one of them is technically a sidekick and supposed to just immediately capitulate. Which he pretty much always does.
I do wonder if there might be like titles and material out there in which there must be like very strong relationships between the villains, so that they're not always fighting each other. Because it's sort of like,
I do recall an episode of Justice League where they formed a society where they actually did like trust building exercises, like, close your eyes and fall backwards and we'll catch you, so that they could trust and fight better together against the heroes, because the heroes were learning to fight well together. They went on practice sessions. Why don't the villains? And they actually spent the time at it, and they were able to be much better a force because they knew what the others were going to do, and they were able to work together to get that extra oomph out of their abilities.
Well, that's pretty good.
It was a pretty decent episode.
But I don't know if it wouldn't be motivated by loyalty or respect or anything like that. Well, I guess
that's the thing, is respect does apparently kind of come out of that sort of stuff.
Okay.
When you learn to trust, you learn to respect. And that might be an interesting thing to define the difference between villains, heroes, and anti-heroes. Is whether they will start developing trust for the people they're fighting alongside. And I think that might be an interesting way of showing like a progression from a villain to an anti-hero. Is the hero, can't trust them, when they're working alongside, and then gradually they do develop a trust. Villain's no longer so villainous, becomes an anti-hero.
Yeah.
I would like to sit down and take a look at that for some reformed villains and see if you can see that progression of trust, respect, and then they change and become a better person because they're finally understood at some degree. All right, now here's another villain for you.
Okay.
Two-Face. Is he his own sidekick?
Yes, sure. Why not?
Okay. So then, could we say that the ugly, evil half of him is the main one, where the Harvey Dent is the sidekick, the non-scarred side? Which side would be the head? Which one would be the villain?
Let me see. Which one is the main?
Yeah, which one's the real villain? Which one's the sidekick?
I guess you can't answer that about Two-Face, though, because
the thing is what you could see it as is that you could see it as the Two-Face, the evil one, as being the villain, whereas the sidekick Harvey Dent curbs the worst of his edges about, keeps things a little bit more fair with what he's doing. You got to flip the coin. You got to flip the coin. You could see it as the other way. You could see it as Harvey Dent is trying to mete out actual justice in society, with Two-Face as the sidekick. And he's always making sure it goes a little darker than anti-hero could be. And Lord knows, I think enough people have portrayed him in such a different way that it could work either way depending on the story arc.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I guess like the more charismatic half of the personality, I think, is the evil, scarred half, because that's interesting. And that's like, oh, this character is interesting. He's scarred and he's kind of evil and he does things. So that seems like it would be the driving force. But, like you were saying, there could be...
Well, I've seen some very nice deep things on him. I remember one thing, it'd be years ago on the Absorbiscom blog, where one guy was able to say, with fairly good backup and not just a little bit of charisma in himself, that Two-Face is not Harvey Dent's problem. Two-Face is Harvey Dent's solution. Mm-hmm. That Harvey's got these problems with what he perceives to be like how life should be. Where is actual justice in a world where, let's face it, justice technically doesn't exist. It's not a particle. It's a make-believe thing we try and impose upon reality.
Yeah, sure, of course.
And that Two-Face is his solution for making sure you can have something that resembles justice in a reality that doesn't actually have it as a core principle. He relies down to the the flip of a coin to make sure it'll happen.
Right.
And it was a very good article. I'll see if I can find it to send it to you. We can put it up on the thing.
If you put it in the show notes, yeah.
Because it's a very good read and a lot more psychoanalysis than you might want to ever consider for a character. But when you read it, you suddenly start thinking about the character deeper.
Yeah.
So I think any way that happens, everybody wins.
Well, I think the whole Batman franchise, especially including his villains, has a lot to do with mental problems and mental health and mental issues. Because every character is a little...
Mine's up in Arkham Asylum, not in whatever prison.
Yeah.
Although, really, they should have given the Joker the chair a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have.
But that's another topic for another day. So then, let's just think here. There's a lot of mooks for that. I mean, the Riddler has his two henchwomen.
Okay.
He's got his own. They come by various names. They have different words for riddles. But they basically just stand around him, look good, and they're not bad in a fight, but they're not, like, great. They're not going to really stop anyone. No one's not going to be able to get to the Riddler for a physical fist fight because they couldn't get past his henchwomen.
Okay.
So they don't really qualify, I believe, as anything more than just really glorified mooks.
So they're just kind of friends of his.
Well, they can fight, and I suppose they beat the tar out of the cops, but not an actual hero.
Yeah.
Like Robin could take him down. Then Batman just goes and they riddle me this. What's got 4 knuckles and is in your face? My fist. Whack, pow, kaboom, and next thing, okay, he's down.
Yeah. Well, that's always the interesting thing about scale, and this is probably its own topic, but scale and hero stories is that you have your regular people, and above that you have your cops who, they do this for a living, but, they're
they
also
can take a lot of blows to the back of the head, fall unconscious, and they'll be back on the force next week.
Well, yeah, depending on your universe, of course. But and then, in order to have a really threatening bad guy, the bad guy has to be powerful enough that he considers the cops almost like, I take out as many policemen as I feel like,
Although there is something to be said about a villain who's smart enough not to stick around for that many cops to show up.
Yeah, that's a good villain too. So that's we're up to 3 levels of scale now, and then the next level, I suppose, would be the heroes, and then of course you have your Galactus and your Colossus and your.
I like what Shadowrun referred to them as is overwhelming threats.
Yeah.
And all that. They actually have tiers for that: incompetent, on par, superior, overwhelming, and for stuff like.
Okay. So yeah, of course this has been done.
Well, for them, they have their own way, and for the high-end one, the very highest things, they basically don't need to roll to see if they succeed. They're considered so overwhelming, they just keep rolling dice until, they succeeded.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what overwhelming means.
Yeah.
Why bother calling them overwhelming if they can't overwhelm?
Yeah. And then at the very top of it all is the Dungeon Master.
Hopefully.
Even hopefully. Of course the Dungeon Master.
Well, a fair Dungeon Master utilizes the same rules as the players do. Anybody within the system cannot be over top of the system.
Well, no. I mean, I guess it depends on your style, but I think Dungeon Masters almost by definition have to be able to cheat, or, well, I say the word cheat, but I just mean
don't always
play
follow
by
the
different rules, just to keep things moving or for whatever reason. Of course, if they're wise, they use it wisely and don't screw over the players by doing this, of course, unless they deserve it.
And let's face it, let's be honest here, some players really deserve that death. They were so foolish, so reckless.
Well, and they
have the attitude, I'm a PC, I can't really die, I'm the hero of the story. And so the second level PC finds the great old dragon's lair because that's all he does is he hunts it down. It's there, and then he goes in hoping I'll definitely be able to win. I'm a PC, and then one cone of fire later, he is a small pile of ash.
Yeah, but of course, like, if you're playing the game properly, you should also sort of enjoy that. Like, if you're the player, enjoy that as a story and as an experience that happened to you. And, you know, you can say, oh, my character died. Yeah, no, it's
honestly, yeah. If you're going second level up against, you know, a great old worm, you should probably have a backup character ready.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, if a character, like a player says to his DM, oh, I'm going to charge the Baylor or whatever, and the DM's like, okay, roll, and he's like, oh, I got a 20 or whatever, and I guess you killed him. And I guess, I mean, that's possible.
You hurt the Baylor, I won't say you kill him in one blow.
Well, but if you talk to the player, what's their reaction? Is it like, oh, I'm so awesome, or is it like, well, I don't know, the DM kind of let me have that one. Like, what do you think?
I think a hit's a hit. If you rolled a 20, you hurt the Baylor. Not for very long.
Yeah, and long enough to escape, maybe, or something?
Long enough to get his attention. The others escape. Your heroic sacrifice will be well noted as your soul burns for eternity. But at least you could say, yeah, you know, I saved my friends. If you were doing that on purpose. If you just wanted to try and kill him to loot him, well, no one's going to mourn your loss. Yeah.
Speaking of parties, I want to see if we can dig out some meaning from the 4-man group, you know, the 4-man or woman D&D group, and what sort of, like, how does Sidekicks fit into that?
Well, that's an interesting one, because it's a lot of people complain that the cleric is the sidekick. They don't do the frontline fighting. They don't do the big flashy spells. They're expected just to hold back and heal when necessary.
Yeah.
At least amongst the really, really cold and callous groups. Because, let's face it, a cleric can and probably should do more than just be the heal machine. And that if you're working it so that the cleric is being forced to just stand around and cast healing spells, not really good role-playing. Tactically wise, but it's a lot more heartless.
Well, when D&D did 4th edition, they sort of they addressed a lot of that. I think they did the cleric fairly well. Like, they implemented it fairly good. In that they do an attack that also, like, it damages your enemy but also heals your friend, sort of. So you're kind of doing two things at the same time.
Not bad. But yes, I do see the spellcaster so as being more sidekicky than the other classes.
Okay, yeah.
Even although at the higher ends of things, there's that inversion where the wizard becomes so much more powerful that the warrior just basically becomes like a mule. Okay, let's kill them all. Get the loot. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, yeah. There are instances in fiction and, like, stories like The Lone Ranger and Tonto, and
the TV series, not the movie. Let's not talk about the movie.
Okay, we won't talk. We don't need to. I was going to move on to Green Lantern and Kato, and the fact that
Green Hornet and Kato.
Green Hornet.
Green Lantern had unfortunately named Pie Face for a while.
He's
got Robbie Roberts now. You know, the War Machine. He's a good sidekick and character in his own right.
I can't believe I said that, and now I can't edit it out because we're talking about it.
That's okay. You're not the first person I've heard that confuses the two. It's just the green and then what follows next. It's
green something.
It's like you just like say, I really like watching that TV series Star, and then you can follow
Star Fox.
There you go. So everybody has their own base thing. So I really like watching that Star Fox, Star Trek, Star Wars, Star Search.
Star Search. Yeah.
It was a good series, I suppose. Unfortunately, it helped pave the way for some reality TV I don't like, but it was good at its time.
So I was trying to say about the sidekick can be a more powerful person, and yet still for some reason considered the sidekick.
Well, in that case, they have more of a sidekick mentor combo going to them.
Yeah, probably. And Dr. Watson. Well, I don't know. Sherlock is probably smarter than Dr. Watson, but Dr. Watson also does some pretty important stuff. And
he acknowledges ladies in a much more evolved manner than Holmes is known for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That might be a topic for another day too, though. Although how much more evolved is up to dispute. Didn't Watson have 3 ex-wives?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It was good for his day, but no. Times have changed, passed him by.
Well, I mean, there's nothing... Well, I was going to try and say there's nothing wrong with having 3 exes, but you probably are doing something wrong. Yeah.
You should probably sit down and reevaluate how you see things in life. Maybe you just hop into the wedding chapel a little earlier than you should. Maybe you fall in love a little too easy. Good character flaws, very good writing character flaws. Person who falls in love too easily.
Yeah. So also the Order of the Stick is a good example with because I think Roy is kind of your main. So
well, he is the leader of the group.
Yeah, so it's your standard. I don't know if there's 6 party members, but it's a D&D group where they're supposedly equal, and they're all sort of. You can imagine like a player playing each of the main characters, and yet
some are clearly more sidekick style than the others.
Yeah, and they all in some ways they feel like they're all kind of Roy's sidekick because they all. He basically gathered them together. Right?
Yeah. But you can see it in various interesting ways. Durkon being Roy's main sidekick, they're both lawful good, and he usually defers to Roy in matters.
Yeah.
Although Roy does accept his advice and listens to him, which is, I think, good for any 2-person group. You got to listen to the other person, man. Otherwise, you're just maybe even worse than some bad comedy routines. You got to listen, man. With Haley and Elon. Elon is clearly the sidekick, even though they're in a relationship and they should be equals.
Okay, yeah.
Now, unfortunately, that leaves the wizard and the halfling, and they're just. I don't see them as being like sidekicks to either of themselves.
Well, the halfling, they both have their own familiars, so maybe their familiars are.
And yet, Belcar, you really see him as being able to be like a nice sidekick to Roy as well, although much more of a foil for him.
Yeah.
Whereas the Elven Mage V tends to be his own, and definitely on equal with. So he doesn't really have much of the whole sidekick aside from his familiar.
Yeah.
Which is a topic in and of itself for how you treat your class abilities as people or things. Which they've dealt with very thoroughly. We encourage you to read it.
Oh yeah, it's a good comic. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So there's the adventure party dynamic. But really, I think it ultimately would boil down to the personalities rather than actual class-based things. Yeah, sure. Okay.
A good personality cleric could definitely be the head of a group with a rogue or maybe even a paladin as what would be effectively the sidekick. But can we still see in a situation where sidekicking is a thing of a mark of a good character?
Okay, so in TV and stuff?
Without it being what is effectively a second in command. There's a reason why for Order of the Stick I didn't say that Haley was a sidekick to Roy. She's clearly more of a second in command, much more of a professional connection as opposed to they're a sidekick.
Well, second in command, like Commander Riker. That's one example.
Exactly, where he would never be seen as like the sidekick to Jean-Luc Picard.
Right. Yeah.
But he's clearly the subordinate. So there does seem to be a nice difference between those two roles.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, I guess I don't know if Star Trek is the best example because it uses that military framework, which is its own sort of thing. It's its own set of archetypes that involve rank and stuff like that.
But again, with the personality types, you can definitely work up a situation where you can have more of a sidekick position.
Yeah, well, the Doctor in Doctor Who always has a sidekick, always has a companion.
Although that might be more for reasons of audience surrogate.
Yeah. Well,
that's an interesting perspective.
There you go.
Could Robin be seen as like this the surrogate for the audience to Batman?
Maybe maybe sometimes, but that's probably not the main use of him.
No, but it would be a very interesting way to make sure, like, you can help follow, like, the world's greatest detective without being a detective yourself. He explains things to Robin because Robin's the surrogate who's still learning.
Well, yeah, that's true. They use Robin because you know how Batman is like, the Riddler will pose a riddle. This is from the TV show because that's what I remember. But there's a riddle, and Batman's like, oh, well, now I have to figure out this riddle. Well, it's so simple, Robin, I'll tell you how. Rather than just thinking it in his head and just going to the place, you know. So
which is decent, you know, like a way of keeping interest high. I know, follow me, you have to go to this place, and I'll explain everything later.
And then, you know, Robin's asking him questions. Oh, why Batman? Or why this? Or what do you mean? Or, you know, he's asking for clarification. So, yeah.
So can that be seen as, though, in general, as another role for the sidekick across the genres? Across
well, if you're telling a story, you need to convey information to your audience, and one way to do that is to have your dynamic duo have a conversation with each other.
Oh.
So, sure.
Okay. Whereas you don't really would see that sort of thing with Picard and Riker. It's not like Picard has to explain everything to Riker.
Well, that's the thing about Riker. He's different from Robin in that he basically trusts Captain Picard to, like, almost completely, like 100%. Like, he does exactly. Well, I mean, I suppose there's corner cases where he like has to disobey orders for whatever reason.
The information he had was technically faulty. I cannot obey it because, you know, you were under a false premise.
Yeah, and there are things, I think there's happened, like episodes where Riker and Picard have disagreed or have had, you know, differences. But basically, yeah, Riker doesn't ask for explanations. And I think this is, again, typical of the military attitude, is that, no, you do what they say. You don't ask for an explanation.
So then Data would be more of the sidekick because he always asks for clarification and understanding enough that you do have to explain the whole plot to the audience through Data.
That doesn't happen. Of course, there's Wesley Crusher asks annoying questions, too.
Yes, but he wasn't in for the full length of the thing, and everyone, you know, had their own very highly formative opinions on Shut Up Wesley.
Yeah, and it's funny because the thing about Data and the questions that he asks or whatever, if he didn't say them in such a robotic way, like if he didn't, or say, you know, as if he was just curious, like if he asked the question like direct outright, it would be unsettling coming from a Starfleet officer asking a superior.
Dude, you should know this stuff. How did you make it up to lieutenant?
Well, no, it's not. Well, I guess, I mean, if it involves human interactions, then you sort of understand. It's like, oh yeah, because he doesn't understand humans. Although, yeah, if he's been in Starfleet for so many years, he should have at least picked up, you know, at least if he doesn't understand it.
Maybe most of the rest of Starfleet's just a bunch of, like, uncommunicative dicks.
Maybe,
They do seem to have a decent number of enemies. So, it's something to consider that, like, we're only seeing the best of the best. It's not as an enlightened future as they would have us believe.
That's possible. I mean, every once in a while, yeah, you'll see another ship, and they seem to have more problems and issues than the Enterprise, like issues with incompetence and whatever. But I mean, a lot of times they are.
Or moral failings. I've seen a few things where they've done nasty things.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
So that's an interesting though criteria we've established for determining whether or not a character is a sidekick. Is they act as the audience surrogate, and explanations get to you as the audience get filtered through them.
That's what. Yeah, I mean, that's very storyteller. Like, we're on the level of, we definitely know that we're telling a story. And
well, not necessarily. I mean, the Buffy series.
Okay.
Xander then would be the effective sidekick for everybody, as things usually have to get explained down through, you know, so that he understands, at least through the initial seasons. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Whereas Willow is more of an equal for Buffy, because Buffy really doesn't have to explain so much to her. There is communication, of course, going back and forth as they learn one thing or another, but it doesn't have to be constantly explained down to them.
Yeah, well,
so,
yeah,
there you go.
Okay.
So Xander's the sidekick, but Willow is not. Willow's more of the second-in-command style, because of the information level that has to go through.
Yeah, And part of that is just the age or the role of that person, that sidekick, because if they're an older person, they're less likely to be asking, different. They ask different kinds of questions.
But that's the thing is technically everyone's the same age for that group in Buffy, whereas there's a couple decades difference between Riker and Picard.
I'd say maybe there's 10 years.
I'd put it closer at 15, so decades.
Okay, yeah.
Unless Jonathan Frakes is a lot older than I imagine.
Yeah. Well, the thing you have to remember about Star Trek, too, is this is a world in which the average human lifespan is well into the hundreds. What is 150s or something like that?
Yeah, Scotty was still around in the next series. And he got marooned.
But, yeah, he was also frozen in transporter, so he didn't age. But
trust me, he aged.
Spock and Dr. McCoy.
But Spock can't count because he is part alien.
Oh, he is alien, so he would have a longer lifestyle. Okay, yeah. Dr. McCoy, anyways.
Yeah.
He's in it. He's what, 150 or something?
Yeah. And I mean, sure. I mean, he keeps good care of himself because he's a doctor, but that only goes so far. So clearly, medicine is rather good on that for everybody.
Yeah, I would think that. Yeah, the Star Trek. There, I did again, mixing up things. Yeah. In the Star Trek universe, of course they should have longer lifespan. And in fact, 150 seems young to me, or like it seems like by that time we should have a lot longer lifespan. Yeah,
well, keep in mind they're really against putting too much electronics in there because they're very anti-Borg, and there's that whole humans should be human sort of thing, and if you put too much electronics in you, you're no longer a human. You're like the Borg. You are a machine.
That's a good point.
So there's a bit of a bias there.
Well, Picard had an artificial heart, so...
Well, that's only one piece. You need a lot more artificial stuff to become more Borg-like. Became Locutus of Borg.
Yeah. It's funny that they don't... Well, like some people in Star Trek, there are anti-androids, but it seems that most people in Star Trek sort of accept Data. Well, I guess his crew do. He runs into a lot of people.
I do believe Dr. Pulaski didn't take much of a shine to him.
Yeah, that's right.
It was kind of a nice character failing for her. At least it gave a little bit of a difference. And she'd always refer to Data as like an as a machine.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that perspective because, dude, I'm a doctor. I, work with people. I don't work with you, so you're not a people. You're it. So at least you can see like where she's coming from. And it makes sure it causes a little bit of friction, which is good, better writing sort of system.
Yeah, probably. It's probably useful. It also audience surrogate because there will be people who watch Star Trek who will be creeped out by the alien with the weird forehead and the robot with the golden white skin and the who else was on the ship that was kind of weird and that people would react odd to.
The telepath qualify? Troy?
No, she was just hot.
Okay.
But it's funny.
But her ability to read minds, when you think about that, I could have been the creepiest out of all of them.
Yeah, well, certainly, in story.
Particularly if you can't really filter your thoughts and you thought she was hot, and it could be really dangerous too. It's a nice way to line yourself up for a quick slap across the cheek.
She must be so confident. Like, imagine, well, I don't know, because you imagine that she can read all the thoughts of the people all around her all the time, and she's got these revealing outfits. Like, she must be so confident because she gets people thinking about her in that way all the time.
Or maybe it is actually just such a decent feature where people see her in the the whole one piece body leotard, and they're not thinking those thoughts about her. Maybe they've learned that mental trick of how to not even subconsciously objectify other people or.
Well, that's possible, but I don't think so because I think Star Trek, the world of the future.
Keep in mind when Kirk was around, they were all in those go-go skirts.
Yeah, and Kirk, when he got a chance, he went after them.
Actually, he tried to keep away from most of them on a professional level. It was like the Orion slave girls and the people off the ship that he wound up knocking space boots with.
That's true. Actually,
because there was that reoccurring thing with the Yeoman, the blonde-haired lady, that he really didn't have feelings for her. She had feelings for him, but no, dude, she's a crew member of his. That's unprofessional and so totally against the power ratio of a relationship. No go.
Yeah, it's unethical. But the other, like, I have another theory on this, and that is that and like, I don't really know too much about what it's like to be in the military, but from what I understand is you see these people day after day after day, and you see them in all contexts, and they don't necessarily look their best constantly every day. Although I guess on a futuristic starship you could, like, she could have all her makeup and everything constantly every day.
Yeah, it's an odd military feature for them. It's military science. So.
Yeah, but yeah, this thing is that the fact that you do see the same people over and over and over again is they become part of the scenery, part of the background. You don't even, like, you don't think of them that way because
hopefully you should, unless you get creepy and start obsessing on them. Well, then that's all you ever see.
That can happen, but I imagine that in a confined environment like a starship, something like that couldn't really last. It'd be like it would have to explode, or something like some conflict would have to emerge from that. And
see, that's why I think they must have picked up some Vulcan techniques just to learn to, dude, keep it under control and think professionally. Not just good enough to act professionally. We're living in the future now. You can think professionally too. Go.
Yeah. Well, of course, they're also sexually liberated in the future. So it's like if you do have a tryst with another crew member, male or female or whatever, another alien gender with the 3 or 4 genders. But you can sort of just forget about it, and like there's no stigma. It's just, oh yeah, we slept together, we had a fun time, and move on with your life, sort of thing.
What a weird future it is.
Because that was, Gene Roddenberry was writing in the 60s, so, and he was sort of, he believed in
free love,
liberation and all that, to an extent, obviously.
Yeah.
But, and he wrote that into his
they had fun with that in the Enterprise series with Dr. Phlox and the whole species of his. They each have, each male has 3 wives, and each wife has 3 husbands, and they don't always match up.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that whole thing going on there. They had a lot of fun revisiting that idea and taking it to some interesting extremes.
Yeah. And of course you have to remember that with Star Trek, it's not an actual...
It doesn't really need to function because it's technically an artificial construct for the purposes of storytelling.
Yeah, and it's to shine a light on the weirdness of our relationships, this weird idea that we have about being monogamous and all that.
Mind you, things are different now than they are then. I mean, if a girl goes out is dating 4 different guys at the same time, that's seen as kind of scandalous sort of thing. Or if a guy's going out with 4 girls, he's not really you're not really showing the proper attention to them. You're not showing them proper respect. But you go back to the 60s and 50s, and there was going steady and then just dating several different people.
Right. Well, I don't know if you'd be sleeping with all of them.
No, but the fact is you'd be going out with them and sharing romantic times and doing things together. And then, date's done. 2 hours later, you go out on another date with someone else.
Yeah. Well, you see this with Archie and...
I know, and that's why it seems so weird with Archie these days, is because that's a holdover from previous decades, where that was completely okay. He wasn't going steady with either of them, so it's not like there was any expectations. But now, that doesn't happen. If you're going out with one person, it's generally assumed you're going out with just that one person.
Maybe, yeah.
It causes friction for someone to know, oh, you went out with someone else that night? How dare you, you two-timer?
Well, if you don't actually have whatever you call the agreement, going steady or whatever. You don't
that's the thing, is it used to be just the default. Unless you announced you're going steady, you go with other people. Now there's the whole expectation where you start going out with someone, there's no one else romantically, for potentials in the life. You're not going out with 4 ladies, one each different day of the week.
Well, I mean, my sort of position on that is you can't make assumptions.
It's not considered the norm as it used to be. That you'd have to double check how many other women are you going out with this week. It's generally assumed if you're going out on a date with a woman, you're starting things up with just her. You're going to pursue it and respect just her.
I don't think that's what because I think that's a stupid assumption to make.
Well, it is stupid.
You're setting yourself up for
it is more of what people will make for an assumption than in previous decades.
I guess. I mean, they'd be wrong to. I mean, that's a bad way to go about it. It's just to assume that
people could argue the reverse is also a bad way to go about it too.
Because you went on one date with a guy, now he has to, now he's married to you or whatever. No, it's a date, so you have to keep things in perspective. I think that's just plain common sense.
Yes, but it is something people can start expecting. If you're going out with the one person, you're going to be trying to see whether it works or not. And if it does work, it's just you and them. If it doesn't work, then you go out with someone else. Then you're not going out with like 4 people, which is the best of the group. Okay, I go out with bachelor number 3.
Well, I guess it makes a big difference whether you're actually sleeping with any of them.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. But it's just one of those things that has changed with the decades, so it's interesting to look back. And I think that's one of the things that Star Trek has done especially well.
Okay, well, so what is the Star Trek perspective, though? It's just that it's liberated, sort of, that sort of thing?
They're just different. I don't think they make the assumption that one is better or righter than the other. They just say these are different ways of going about it, and to only assume one is the only thing for everybody is kind of weird. So they say, hey, look, there's other ways to go about your life.
It probably,
and then everybody sits down and thinks, what a wonder these stars are. And then they start the theme song, and then, end of the episode.
Well, yeah, because in the Star Trek, you can't help but be exposed to all these alien cultures, and some of them don't even have 2 genders. It's like, so you can't help but just live in a world where you have to accept difference.
That's one of the reoccurring storylines, I think, that will probably never get old for that sort of series. It's just different ways to think about relationships between people.
Yeah, that's true. And, the Borg are very scary and evil. But then in later episodes, it's like, oh, well, now Picard's joined them, and now he's kind of seen what this is like. And now we have some liberated Borg who tell about the experience and say, well, I kind of miss having all those voices because they were my family or whatever,
Because it's so lonely in here without them.
I think that's what one of the Borg said when he got disconnected. He's like, I feel so alone.
That's a good point. Okay, but getting back to the whole Sidekicks thing, let's go to the other star. Let's go to the Star Wars.
Okay, Star Wars.
Now, we've established...
Chewie.
Well, Chewie should be an interesting one for a sidekick potential, but he's more of a partner because you really can't explain too much through him. What he says has to get explained to you through the others.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, people accuse George Lucas of being a bad writer, but I really enjoy that dialogue that Han has. Basically, it's one-sided conversation, but so he has to carry both.
I think that's a lot of fun. Most people can have fun with there. So in that case, technically, Mr. Solo is the sidekick because he's the one things get explained through when other people do it. What did he say? Oh, he said this. So he's the explanation. He's your go-to. He's the source.
Okay.
So, but here's the thing: is the person that people have to explain things to is Luke. Luke's just this farmer, the moisture farmer from the ass end of nowhere in space.
Yeah, asking annoying questions.
Well, what people see as annoying is he's never been off of the farm, really.
Why isn't the ship going? Why aren't we moving anywhere?
And so you encounter the situation whereby the protagonist is also the sidekick, as opposed to what would be effectively the heroes, at least.
Okay.
Because people are explaining things to him. That makes, through the criteria we've figured out, well, at least one of them, he's effectively the sidekick at the start.
He's some kind of...
He does grow to his own heroic stature as his skills progress, and he becomes more knowledgeable. Spending time with Yoda will do that.
Well, it's this. I think from a storytelling point of view, the story often is centered on Luke. So, in that sense, he's sort of the main character. He's not a hero at first, right? He's just
he starts off as effectively the sidekick who loses that. Obi-Wan was his hero sort of thing because he was the mentor teaching him, and then he loses him, and then it's the sidekick without the hero.
Yes, because the Padawan relationship is very much like sidekick, sort of. And we see that when we get to go back to the
The Clone
first-
Wars
the-
series,
the
too.
other films where Anakin and Obi-Wan are together, and that feels very much like, a dynamic duo kind of dynamic.
Yeah, because
Dynamic.
Yes, because especially when they've progressed beyond just the teaching stuff, Anakin is still following his mentor stuff, but he's very much his own person. Mm-hmm. So it definitely feels much like Anakin's a kind of creepy force-wielding Robin.
Yeah.
Although I must admit, Robin with some lightsabers now, like the double-edged lightsabers instead of the bow staff, I'm gonna have to hunt down DeviantArt now.
Yeah. Well, do you think if Batman could make a lightsaber, do you think that would be his favorite weapon?
Only if you could make it somehow in the shape of like a batarang.
The lightsaber. Bat lightsaber.
The bat saber? The bat lightsaber?
No, okay, let me say that.
No, it'd have to be dark, because he's one with the shadows. Like a dark saber.
I guess if Batman could craft any weapon from the Star Wars universe, which one would he, pick? Let's say he can pick one.
Well, he did craft Brother Eye, which is an orbiting satellite that can watch everybody. So it wound up becoming a villain. So technically he creates an intelligent Death Star? Oh boy. Just
the
what
Death
we
Star. Okay, if you count the Death Star.
Well, see, that's the thing is he created Brother Eye, the Mark 1, the Mark I sort of thing to monitor heroes, to find out if any of them go rogue. He'll know about it. Yeah. And then there was a system he had set up for OMAX to create a counter force to stop the heroes who have gone rogue. So I could see him creating something like the Death Star to stop alien invasions under a similar pretense. Because let's face it, it's the DC universe. Aliens like to invade Earth. It happens surprisingly frequently for such a more or less useless planet such as Earth.
But Batman doesn't use guns, though. So would he really use a giant blaster the size of the planet?
To stop an alien invasion, I would say, yeah, the amount of lives he could save.
Would he make it preemptively, not even knowing that?
He would make it, but he wouldn't just okay, they've come into the solar system, fire! No, he'd wait till they presented some sort of dangerous threat to those around them.
Yeah, I thought Batman was a good guy, technically. So building the Death Star seems a little bit not good.
Well, if it stops the bad guys.
I guess so, yeah, because Batman's the dark good guy,
the
Dark Knight, so he does kind of do dangerous things in the name of good.
So I could see him building, the Death Star, just to protect Earth from alien invasions.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah, yet another alien invasion.
Because, that's how it goes in the DC universe. It's not a season go by where you're not invaded. You have World War III over again.
But that's an interesting way to create a hero, is the
good-natured extremist.
Oh, I was going back to Luke Skywalker, the detached sidekick, who becomes a hero in his own right because the main hero got killed or whatever.
Well, he gets Yoda later on as technically his hero, although Yoda's not like a physical hero, he's more like a mental hero, and then he just dies of old age.
Yeah.
It's kind of harsh.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know if Yoda counts as a superhero or just because he doesn't really do. He doesn't.
He's got the same voice as Kermit and Grover. And yet, in the second group of movies, you do see him flip out and just go nuts with the lightsaber. He just doesn't do it. He's progressed to the state where he doesn't do it because he can do better than resorting to the physical combat. You can get someone else to do it for him.
Well, and in the Phantom Menace film, Yoda doesn't do any fighting or anything like that. I don't think, if I remember correctly. Yoda is at that state where he's the old man and he's accomplished everything he needs to accomplish physically, and he just basically tells the other Jedi what to do, or
Yeah, that's why he's on the council.
Yeah,
he helps dictate, entire patterns of thought for them effectively.
And then it's not until the Clone Wars start and conflict starts that Yoda actually has to go back to his original training, which apparently he still knows and he's still able to use. But he is basically, in the prequels, he must be, if he's 900 years old in the A New Hope.
He's in his late 80s. sort of thing.
850 to 880.
Yeah.
In the prequels. Yeah. So
Which,
that's still
well,
pretty
the
old.
thing is, he's not real. You don't know too much about his race. Maybe they're all like that. Oh, that's kind of creepy. Just a bunch of like old baby-faced, like Yodas or
My
old man-faced
suspicion
baby Yoda.
is
Ooh.
that the Force keeps him alive at least somewhat longer, if not significantly longer, than his natural lifespan would normally be. So his race might live like 200 years or something like that. But
I heard then again, I also heard a theory where he was like a midget-shaved Wookiee. That's why he was so good, communications with the Wookiees, because he was one of them.
Yeah. Well,
no evidence supporting it, of course.
900 years, I think, especially in a world universe like Star Wars, you could almost change from any like humanoid shape to any other. So he might just be a guy, a dude like that. We don't know what happens to human beings when they live for 900 years.
I do know, according to a short, was it Aldous Huxley story, after 200 years we become apes. There was there's a story about that. It's, it was a weird little story, just to help identify a situation that was going on with the axolotl salamanders.
Right, and then 200 years more later, we're fish, and then 200 years later, we're after Yoda.
Yodify. Or, well, heck, I mean, Yoda's an alien species, ostensibly. Maybe, he just goes through some sort of, crystal morphosis thing where, like a butterfly type situation, metamorphosis, where he cocoons himself up and then he comes out looking really different.
Sure, yeah.
Who knows? I don't know if anybody really knows.
I don't.
I don't know if even George Lucas knows. If he's thought that far into what the heck goes on with Yoda and his lifespan for his species.
I may have to look up and see if the extended universe has information on what race Yoda is, because they probably did fill in that detail.
I do know there's a mention of a female of his race.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know how much of that's actually canon, how much of that is just weird. It's all weird, but I don't know how much of it is. But yeah, that's an interesting thing, is where the protagonist is the sidekick as opposed to the hero. For an interesting way to tell a story.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see a book told where the thing with Luke is that in the end he becomes the hero, like he's the guy. But I would like
he brought
to see
balance to the Force.
Yeah. But I would like to see a story told from beginning to end from the point of view of a character who never goes beyond the station of second fiddle. Like you see the story through his eyes, but he never becomes the hero, because that's sort of what you expect from stories, that they become something more.
I think you could tell an interesting story from the perspective where if he was like a villainous second in command, like a sidekick for the villain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then you could have the entire thing like, because he's the sidekick to the villain, you see the villain in the best possible light. Like that old Simpsons episode with Scorpio.
Oh, yeah.
He's like Homer's employer at the new place. And honestly, he was a charismatic. He was a good person, but an evil man.
Yeah.
Supervillain seizes East Coast.
That was a good one.
So that's an interesting way of looking at things from different lights. You could have a lot of fun exploring that as the perspective of your story. And if the villain does have good intentions for taking over, the East Coast, so be it. Maybe you could work it out that way as a misunderstood genius. But I think looking at the sidekick can tell you is at least about as much from the perspective of what the hero is like as from any other perspective. So the sidekick can almost become integral to telling a better hero story.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've mentioned this already in talking about how the sidekick can stand in for the audience or, explain things.
So I just think there's a lot that, out of the Marvel heroes, you don't have them with sidekicks quite so often. Except for Wolverine. He's had a couple, sidekicks throughout the years, and I think he tells a better story as more than just him there. I mean, sure, he works good with a partner like Gambit. The two of them together in, Mad Rapport, that's good fun storytelling. Mm-hmm. As two anti-heroes, gonna make right. Almost has like a cop buddy sort of thing.
Yeah,
they got 12 hours to save the girl, and bust the villains. But they're not going to bring them in. They're just going to bring them down.
Yeah.
So, it writes still. But I think Wolverine tells a better story when he's next to, say, Jubilee.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's something like we said about contrasting styles for between the hero and the sidekick.
Yeah.
Wolverine being effectively death incarnate, and Jubilee at the time having little more than sparkler powers. And a lot of spunk and moxie.
Well, that's the thing. You don't often see a superhero and sidekick who are identical or who, dress the same outfit or whatever. Yeah.
No, but they do tend to be a little bit closer. Like, if you were to switch Robin's costume out for, a smaller Batman, you could easily see that work. Even though Robin's supposed to be the light and the wonder that helps keep Batman from sliding too dark and grim.
Yeah,
or some other nonsense.
So Batman and Robin would have very similar outlooks and approaches to problems and such.
Whereas with Jubilee, she's really doesn't want to gut a dozen people at a time. It's not her thing. There's been 2 people she's really wanted to kill, and that's because they killed her foster parents, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So, that's about the only time she really wanted to really hurt anybody. She's otherwise more about stop them, not kill them, and then, save the day elsewhere. Wolverine's more of the, I'm going to have to wind up spilling their intestinal organs everywhere. It's just going to save us time if I do it now. At least that's his, personality a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, but that's kind of, in some ways, that's unique to Wolverine, is that there aren't a lot of other heroes who have that similar outlook. There are other anti-heroes.
Punisher, yeah, definitely.
Punisher. But that's not as common among heroes, that outlook of being extremely violent.
And that's why, I think having a non-violent sidekick really works as a good counterpoint to him.
Yeah.
As opposed to, say, Captain America and Bucky, who is just a really enthusiastic mini-captain.
Well, I do, yes, it makes a good story. I guess in some ways it's because if he were to go out of control or go too far, then it would temper him. In some ways, it restrain him or whatever it needs to happen. But at the same time, you wonder if, is it the best idea to pick a sidekick who's that different from you? If you're trying to accomplish a certain goal, shouldn't you just try to pick someone who has your same outlook so they'll just basically go along with you? That way you can get more done.
But then that's the equivalent of just, hiring a yes man. Sometimes you need that second alternative point of view to provide a better balance, the yin to your yang sort of thing.
I guess if you don't trust yourself, I guess it's better. But
especially with someone like Wolverine, he has a lot of doubts as to whether or not he does the right thing. So having someone there who can help point it out and say, no, what you did was actually quite right, even though you don't feel right about it. And then, okay, good. Moral, dilemma resolved.
I guess this is what, if Batman were to hire a yes man, just someone who's basically Robin, because Robin basically does whatever Batman wants him to do, right?
More of the current Robins. I do recall the original Robin, Dick Grayson, they had a falling out.
Okay.
Due to styles and things like that.
But Batman would be the kind of guy he's pretty sure of himself. When he's
overly confident. He thought it was a good idea to build an all-seeing, intelligent satellite that had access to 1 million people that could become a near Superman stopper. Yeah. So, he thought this was a perfectly fine and reasonable idea. He needs someone to help provide a counterbalance, and Alfred can't always do that. Alfred's usually his counterpoint.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
If I may say, sir, do you think you might be a tad batshit crazy on this idea?
And sometimes he says, nope, or whatever he says.
No, I can't stop thinking. I'm too busy typing and coding my own personality programs here. Haha.
Well, we've been going on for about 90 minutes of talking, so we should probably wrap it up.
Okay. So sidekicks seem to be essential for creating both a better character, a more rounded hero, as well as providing an easier way to explain things off to the audience.
Bonus question for the audience. You can write in. Which one of us is the sidekick? Me or Ryan?
Wow. We could ask it if either one of us is the sidekick to the other, or if one of us operates as a second in command to the other.
Oh, yeah.
because we have established that there is a technical difference between the two.
So write in with your... or don't.
But yes, and for those who are wondering, sidekick comes from your pants pockets. Back when putting pockets on your clothing was considered new and crazily wild, they were called kicks, and the kicks on your side were the hardest to pickpocket, so they were seen as the most loyal. And so this is how you got the term sidekick. They were the most loyal to you.
There you go. Sidekick is your side pocket.
Yeah, your pants pockets are your sidekicks, man. And so, okay, that solved you a quick Google trip to the Wikipedia.
If you haven't already been there. But, yeah.
There you go.
So what else? Email thesimulationist@gmail.com. Look us up on all your favorite social networking sites, and if we're not already there...
it's not your favorite, not really.
Well, point us to other places where you don't see us for some reason.
Are we on Google Plus?
Yeah. Well,
is anyone else?
Google Plus. Yes.
Okay. From last I heard, their numbers weren't doing too healthy. Just made sure they're still maintaining a decent base.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. So, you guys take care out there. Enjoy the BC Day, or whatever day it is you're celebrating tomorrow. Even if, you're not part of Canada and tomorrow's just Monday for you. In which case, sorry, it's Monday. Not really much of a reason to celebrate, but...
But it's BC Day. The whole world can celebrate BC Day with us. We're happy to have them.
Or at least you can use it as an excuse to buy yourself some donuts.
Yeah, or some other BC pot products that we don't need to mention.
Technically endorsed. Although I will admit, some of those bongs they got out there are really stylish. You don't need to smoke with them. They're just really nice to have around as an object d'art.
Okay.
So,
let's see. I've been Josh Levin.
I've still been Ryan Kirkby.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.